Okay, hope you have your.
Good evening. Good evening.
Hope you have your Haggadahs. I'm working on that. Okay, in the part where we have the 5 sages meeting in Bnei Brak. It's like this in Haggadah. Comes after the 4 questions and maybe a paragraph or 2 after that. Here's the following. First, do the paragraph, then we'll try to understand what's going on. Einsidler, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Tarfon. These 5 great scholars happened to Shoyim Masuba Bnei Brak. They were having their seder in the city of Bnei Brak. Okay. And they discussed the going out of Egypt the whole night. And notice, it says that they were discussing the exodus from Egypt the whole night, but obviously they did not eat matzah or moror the whole night. Because why? Why couldn't they do that? The Haggadah tells us they were just discussing the story the whole night. What about the eating the matzah? They've done that. Could they have eaten matzah the whole night or moror the whole night? Or any of those mitzvahs that we have?
They have to be done eating at a certain time.
Yeah, when? Well, we said it last time.
Yeah, halfway in the middle of the night, halfway between
Right.
you see the stars and the dawn.
Right.
But I have another question.
Yeah, what?
So what, all the kids went home?
I can't answer. I don't know. Maybe they have it. They said that the students came later to tell them it's time to say Shema Yisrael. I suppose that means also that students there too. But anyway, the problem that our sages are faced with is that the city of Bnei Brak in those days was the city where Rabbi Akiva officiated as the chief rabbi. The other rabbis really lived in other cities. So the problem was, how did they go ahead and come together? Okay, so
there wasn't there at the time the great, I don't remember his name, the greatest rabbi, and he was exiled. He got angry at Rabbi Akiva, so he wasn't invited.
I don't remember this. How come these 5 rabbis happened to be in Bnei Brak?
There were 5 rabbis, but who was the head of the Sanhedrin at the time? And then they didn't invite him because he was too bossy.
I'm not sure what you're referring to. But all I know, the question is, that city of Bnei Brak at that time, I don't know if it's the same Bnei Brak we call today, but the city of Bnei Brak was really the city of Rabbi Akiva. All these other rabbis lived in different other cities. So the problem was, why are all these 5 great sages coming together and having their seder in Bnei Brak? Why did they? Okay, so so one of the commentators said that many times these 5 great sages, or some of these great 5 sages, would visit Rome frequently. And why would they go to Rome? Why would they go to Rome frequently? And I'll be bringing some other sources where you find that he's going to Rome. Because the Romans, every so often, go ahead and make certain rules and regulations and decree against the Jews that cannot observe something. And they would have, and these 5 great scholars who are the leaders of the community of Israel would travel to Rome many times, back and forth. And it happened in this particular year, the way some of the commentators understand it, that they were coming from Rome, and somehow the boat came in and docked at the Erev Pesach. And the closest place from the place where they docked was Bnei Brak. So all these rabbis, they couldn't go to the other cities, wouldn't make it for Yontif. So they all assembled together and observed Pesach by Rabbi Akiva's house. Now, how do we know this? And let me just give you a few places that talks about that. We find many times these sages are on boats. Here's the Gemara in Sukkah. The Mishnah discusses the problem: may somebody construct a boat? I'm trying to construct a sukkah on a boat. What do you think? If you're on a boat, are you, according to halacha, can you build a sukkah on a boat? No answer. Well, look, the Mishnah rules that if it can withstand an average wind, it will be okay. However, if it can't, then the sukkah is psula, the sukkah is invalid. But anyway, look what the Gemara says. It mentions also two of these scholars, Maisa Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Akiva, Shem Boim Basrina. The incident of Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Akiva, two of those scholars that I mentioned in Haggadah, they were on a boat.
That's what I was talking. Good.
What?
I'll tell you afterwards. Go
Okay,
ahead.
Omar Rabbi Akiva, Rabbi Akiva stood up. He also Sukkah Brosh Asfina. Must have been Sukkah. Maybe they had ample time to come back home. However, when they were coming back home, something must have happened that the boat didn't dock soon enough. They had the rowboats, and there's all the oaring that had to do that, oars and so on. Okay, so anyway, they didn't make it back until Arab. They were on a boat, and they put up a sukkah. Sorry, Amad Rabbi Kiva was a sukkah brosh Yisrina. Rabbi Kiva stood up. Sukkah was coming, or maybe, and he constructed a sukkah on the top of the boat. The machar noshba buach bakoratu. A wind came and blew down the sukkah. Amalu Rabbi Gamliel, and Rabbi Gamliel said to him, Akiva, so he said, Akiva, what happened to your sukkah? Rabbi Gamliel was of the opinion at that time that you should never build a sukkah on a boat because the winds are too fierce and it was going to blow down the sukkah. But although according to halacha, a person could put up a sukkah on a boat provided it could withstand an average wind on the sea. But anyway, one thing you do see from here, that they were on a boat. And why are they on a boat? It must have been a time they had to travel to Rome to negotiate with the Senate, because maybe the Senate went ahead and decreed evil rules against the Jews, and they were trying to stop it. Okay, that's one place. Let me get another place there.
Rabbi Gamliel wasn't in Bnei Brak with the other rabbis.
He was there.
He was?
All right, this place. Yeah, but did you find that they were on a boat? Okay, Rabbi Gamliel was not there.
Well, because I don't remember the story, but because Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Gamliel were arguing.
Well,
I know what it is. Because Rabbi Gamliel had a very strict interpretation, and Rabbi Akiva had a very loose interpretation.
That's the Gemara Brachos about that was Rabbi Yeshua. I think Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel. It was Rabbi Yeshua. And Rabbi Gamliel was concerning, I think it was whether you could have a marv at night. Or something. It was another machlokas. I think that was the machlokas. But here's something else where we find most of the rabbis mentioned here in Haggadah on a boat. Look at this. Maisa comes from a Midrash Rabbi. Maisa Rabbi Gamliel, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Rabbi Kiva. These are except for Rabbi Gamliel, all the rest of them are mentioned here in Haggadah. And Sheholchu Romi, they were on a ship to Rome. We see it with Dor Shusham, and while they were there, they gave a Torah lesson, and they said the following during this Torah lesson: the ways of God are not like the ways of man. Shehu goes there, gezerah, to a person, he might go ahead and make a law, decree something, but not necessarily does he see to it that it's followed through, that his rules are listened to. But he'll go ahead and ask others to see if his ruling is being observed. And he maybe will not do anything just because he just makes the decree, and other people maybe has offices to make certain that the rule is carried out. But that's not the way of God. He rules and he makes a decree, and he himself follows through that the ruling is done. There was a certain Jew who did not believe in God, Omalei ain't devrechem el kazab. And he said to the rabbis, it's a bunch of lies what you're saying. Lo matem Elohim omer yoseh lama eina mishamis Shabbos. Now, if you're saying that God decrees and does what he has to decree, so why is it that we find that God does not really observe Shabbat? How do you find God not observing Shabbat? What do you mean by that? Where do you find God that if he was a human, you would say he's not observing Shabbat? So the commentators say what he meant was, according to halacha on Shabbat, we're not permitted to carry in a public domain. So this particular person, he said, look, doesn't God move the clouds? Doesn't God move the sun? And all the planets are moving. So how is he allowed to do that? We cannot carry, if you're in the public domain, we're not on Shabbat, you're not allowed to carry more than, of course, 4 amos, which is about approximately 8 feet in the public domain. So God is not observing what he says. He's decreeing, but he doesn't observe himself. Okay. So the answer the rabbi said to this person, Omarullah, Rosh Balala, Ain Adam Rashayla, Taltel, Besof, Katsera, B'Shabbos. They said, if you had a private court or private home for that matter, can't you go ahead and carry in your own home? Yeah, he says, of course you can. So they said, same thing by God. You have to consider it this way. When we talk about God, what is his private domain? The whole world. The heavens, the earth, it's all considered a private domain, just like you have a courtyard or a house, and that's a private domain by you, and you're allowed to carry on Shabbat in your private domain. So God, the whole world is a private domain of God. So if he moves clouds from one place to another, or the planets are moving from one place to the other, that's not considered desecrating the Sabbath. He is observing what he says. That's what the argument was. That's something. Okay, so there, but the main point over here is that we see these sages were traveling to Rome and they were coming back. Another place where you find that traveling to Rome, an interesting incident, wrote down in the Midrash. Again, an incident where our rabbis were in Rome. Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, Rabbi Gamliel. Again, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yeshua, again, like we said, Rabbi Gamliel is not mentioned here, but he also was on this trip. But we do find Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Because of Snaklitin, Shel Melech, Loma Mikan, Yad Lamedom, or Yebechol Om Yehudi. It's something like a Haman or like what's his name, Hitler, where the officers of the king one time said that, we should do away with the Jews throughout our kingdom. For the next 30 days, we should try to rid ourselves of these Jews. Okay, that was a ruling that they decided upon in the Senate. But one particular senator, or whatever major, a member of that Senate, said to himself, he was Yoresh Shemayim, he had some fear, he was a decent person. Bo Eitzel Rabbi Gamliel, and this particular Senate, remember the Senate, came to Rabbi Gamliel and revealed to him what's the plan is that for the next 30 days, they want to annihilate the Jews. Okay? The rabbis were very concerned. What can we do to avoid this horrible decree? Also, Yoresh Mabbanon, like we said, was a decent person. And he said to Rabbi Gamliel, don't worry about it so much. I'm sure that your God, the God of the Jews, will somehow save you. Okay. So at the end of 25 days, this decent member of the Senate, told his wife about it. And 25 days had passed. She said, no, you want to react to this, but you only have like 5 days left. 25 days have already passed. It's okay, we still have 5 days. What can we do to solve this problem? His wife also is a very righteous woman. He says, you know what? You know what? You have a special meaning. It seems like they used to carry these, where are these senators or members of the Senate, had these type of rings that was able to hold some poison. I suppose if they'd be captured or something, they could go ahead and drink the poison and don't have to reveal any information or whatever, and they'd give their lives for it. So she said to him, you have this type of ring that has that poison. But it seems like there was a very interesting ruling in the Senate that if any time during the first 30 days of a particular decree, one of the members of the Senate dies, the decree is null and void. He says, this is what you should do. She was telling him you should drink some poison, you'll die, and you'll save all these Jews. And he did so. Shamallah, he went ahead and he drank some of that poison and he died. So based on this ruling, that evil decree to annihilate the Jews was revoked. And all rabbis heard about this. What's going on? This is really a very righteous man. He was thinking of his life so we could survive. He all the way to the Shtol, they said he visited his wife. They wanted to show their appreciation and thank her for whatever was done. Our rabbi said to her, it was this expression that he used to her. Said, you know, isn't it a shame? The boat has left, but the toll was not paid. The tax was not paid. What did that expression mean? See, it most probably this particular member of the Senate wanted to convert. So it said, isn't it a shame? A great righteous person gave up his life to save us, and it seems like he didn't have a chance to circumcise himself and maybe to be circumcised and to become Jewish. I suppose that was his wish. His wife said to them, I know what you mean. You should know the boat did not leave until the toll was paid. Meaning, before he died, he made certain that he wanted to convert to Judaism, and he had a circumcision performed on him. Okay, and you went ahead. Smartutim, Malem Dam Nusumala. She went ahead and she brought out to the rabbis sort of a napkin of some sort, and she showed them blood that came from the Dam Hamila, from the drops of blood that came out when he was circumcised. So this righteous Gentile, which most probably converted to Judaism, had his bris milah and died as a righteous Jew. So, but the point is over here, besides the incident, is that again we find our sages visiting Rome, and based on this particular incident, here we had one of the members of the Senate saving Jews from a horrible decree to annihilate Jews. Okay, let's go further. So getting back to this incident, we had these 5 sages in Bnei Brak, as I mentioned. Since as we see from the couple incidents that I just cited, we see that these rabbis were these were leaders at that time, and they visited Rome frequently in order to avert any evil decree that the Senate had passed. Okay, so anyways, so it seems like at one time they must have visited Rome. They were coming back for Pesach, and when the boat arrived at the port, It was late. It was right before Yontif, and the closest place was Bnei Brak. So all these great rabbis were in Bnei Brak at this particular incident that's brought down here in the Haggadah. Okay. And also, let's go back to the Haggadah. And they were discussing the exodus of Egypt the whole night. Only that mitzvah was done. Because as we said before, we mentioned that Matzah and Moror had to be finished by midnight. So there was a big mitzvah to go ahead and discuss the story and also sort of commentaries and so on concerning the exodus from Egypt the entire night. And Achabol told me they and it was the whole night they had been discussing that their students said to them, was that our rabbis, you should know that the time to recite the morning Shema has arrived, which means the break of dawn, or according to we say it means when the sun comes above the horizon. It's hachama. That would be the earliest time that you could say the Shema in the morning. Okay, that's that rule of peace. Now, so they were announcing the Haggadah is going ahead and bringing a particular discussion that they had during that night. It happens to be also a mission in the Brach, what's brought here in the Haggadah. Says the following. Omer Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah, he was one of the five. Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah said, Harei ani keben shivim shana. I looked like 70 years. What do you mean look like 70? Keben shivim shana. Why did I say? Why did it say look like 70?
Because he had a white beard, and he was a young man, but he overnight grew the white beard.
Yeah, because he was appointed at the head of the Sanhedrin at that time, but he didn't want to look so young, so he wanted people to respect him. So a miracle happened during that his beard became gray. So he looked like a 70-year-old man, looked like an elderly gentleman. Now the problem was that at that time, till this point, when they used to recite the Shema, they only recited the first two paragraphs. Why did they only do the first two paragraphs? Because the last paragraph that we recite as the third paragraph of the Shema deals with tzitzis, the fringes. Do we wear tzitzis at night? When are we required to wear talis with tzitzis?
In the morning.
In the morning, during the daytime, but not at night. You don't have to wear tzitzis at night. So originally, I'm not going to do today. But originally, the time of these rabbis, they only would recite the first two paragraphs because they felt, what's the sense of reciting that third paragraph, the mitzvah of tzitzis? You're not required to wear tzitzis at night. So therefore, their recital of Kiddush in those days would be the first two paragraphs. But Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah said, no, we should also say the third paragraph, not because of tzitzis, because it mentions the going out of Egypt, the exodus from Egypt, and that's the mitzvah to recall it during the day and night, like he will soon explain. He says, I was about 70 years old. Until this point, they never recited the exodus of Egypt at nighttime, which we have one example being during the Parshat Tzitzis, we can recite it at nighttime. I felt it should be recited. But my problem was, as Rabbi Eliezer, I couldn't find the proof from the Torah to back my opinion. However, but there was a young man, a young student, Ben Zoma. In other words, he was called the son of Zoma. His name really was Shimon ben Zoma. But in those days, if you were a young person, you never were called by your first name. You were called by your father's name. So that fellow was Ben Zoma. Ben Zoma. So, but when he would be ordained, he'd be Shimon ben Zoma. That was his real name. Okay, but this young student found a source, for my opinion, says Rabbi Eliezer, that you do recite the Exodus of Egypt at night. And his verse was the following. Nema, the verse it says in the Torah, Leman tizkor es yom tizkor meretz Mitzrayim. You should remember the exodus from Egypt, the day you went out of Egypt. Kol yemei chayecha, all the days of your life. And the Ben Zomer explained it. Yemei chayecha, when it says the days of your life,
I mean the days and the night.
that means hayamin, the days. But it says another word, kol yemei chayecha, all the days of your life. And then I said many times, whenever you see in the Torah word kol, it comes to include something that does not explicitly state in the verse. So kol yemei chayecha means the nighttime. So Rabbi Lazar ben Azariah was saying, I finally, this young student was able to help me out and back up my opinion that you should recite the Exodus of Egypt not only during the day, but even during the night. Kol yemei chayecha, all the days of your life.
Can I ask, Rabbi? Can I
Yes,
ask a quick
yes,
question?
yes. Right.
Isn't there another explanation about it's the days of this world and the days of Mashiach?
Right, that's the next opinion. That's the Chacham say that. That's the next opinion. You are correct. But the Chacham say they learn a little differently that verse. Yemei chayecha, the days of your life, like you mentioned, ha'olam hazeh means we recite Shema and this world, in this present world. But the kol yemei chayecha, all the days of your life, what does the all come to include? To include the days of Mashiach. Why is that important? Why would I think that you should not mention the exodus from Egypt when Mashiach comes? That they have to tell me that's what it's telling me. Even when Mashiach comes, I'll be talking about the exodus from Egypt. Okay.
That's the reason for our existence.
Excuse me? Say again?
That's the reason for our existence. We were created.
Good.
By the exodus of Egypt.
That's good. But one might think, as in the prophets, it tells us that there'll be greater miracles that will happen in the days of the Mashiach than what happened when we departed from Egypt. So one might infer, or maybe we shouldn't have to mention the exodus of Egypt, because that compared to what's happening, the miracles that will happen during the time of the Mashiach be far greater than the miracles happening in Egypt. So maybe you shouldn't have to mention it. So now we're told, no, that's not we don't take that opinion. We don't accept it. We always remind ourselves of our humble beginnings. Even when Mashiach will come, and even though miracles will be far greater than the miracles that occurred when we departed from Egypt. Okay.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Rabbi, does anyone ever say that the Exodus was the first redemption and Mashiach would be the final redemption?
Yes, you're right. You're right. That's exactly correct. That when Mashiach comes, the building of the holy temples the building of the third holy temple will take place. There'll be a peace will prevail throughout the world, and so on. Finally, we'll see peace. It says over there, Isaiah says, no person will lift up a sword against another person, and so on. But there will no wars. Just be total peace when that time will come. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Another interesting thing that I overlooked that I just mention that the Abarbanel, who was a commentary that lived during the Spanish Inquisition. So in his commentary, he happens to say the following. He wrote the following. B'nai Brak, remember just before we had those 5 rabbis who assembled in B'nai Brak. So he says, this B'nai Brak, Shem Makom, B'hoyu Mimishpachas Haman B'nis Gairu. He said, living in that place were also descendants of Haman in the Purim story, and they converted. Imagine that according to the Barbanel, descendants of Haman, an evil Haman who wanted to annihilate all our people, they are descendants of Haman, and they converted, and lived in the city of Bnei Brak. That's what he says. Also, there was we find sometimes that descendants of evildoers became converts, righteous converts. Another one that they say is by Sancheiriv. You know who was Sancheiriv? That you must know. Sancheiriv. I think called Sennacherib, something like that, and they call him in English. He was the king of Assyria, of Ashur, Assyria. Now, what did he want to do in his day during the first Holy Temple? Well, what he did first, he was the one who exiled the 10 tribes of Israel that we know as the 10 lost tribes. We have no idea what happened to them. He's put them someplace that we don't know. Okay. And then he wanted to go ahead and conquer Jerusalem, destroy the first Holy Temple. At that time, there was the head of the Jewish community was Chizkiyahu, a righteous king, and he prayed that they should be saved. Sennacherib had a large army surrounding Jerusalem, and a miracle happened. That his entire army died. God, he sent the Malach HaMoves, the angel of death, and all the army were killed by God. Historians don't know to this day what happened to it. They always say, well, if you want to accept the Tanakh's opinion, fine, but we have no proof. We don't know anything what happened to his thousands of soldiers that he had surrounding Jerusalem. But anyway, the descendants of Sancheiriv also became converts, righteous converts, and became Jewish. So the question: how is that possible that you could come from a Haman who wanted to annihilate us, or a descendant of Sancheiriv, his descendants, some of the descendants, converted to Judaism? You would think they would never think of such a thing. So how did that happen? And by the way, this I did read a couple. I think it was last year in some article where it says there are some descendants or family of Hitler who are practicing Jews in Israel. From Hitler, look at the people. His family. Some of his family converted to Judaism. Can you understand that? How is that possible? But it seems like this was received from Sancheiriv, his descendants, and Haman's descendants, and now you even have to this day some descendants of Hitler, family of Hitler, became Jews. Okay, most probably, some of the commentators mentioned that sometimes the descendants of these wicked individuals wanted to see what's so wrong with them. Why did my grandfather, my great-grandfather, want to annihilate these people, or annihilate some of them, or whatever it was? Why did he hate them so? And when they would go ahead and research what the Torah says, they were impressed. Just the opposite. These people do wonderful mitzvot. They're charitable. They do kindness to other people. And they said, whoever it might be, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they were wrong what they said. And they convert and they become righteous Gentiles, righteous Jewish people.
They accepted them.
Yeah, I mean, I read that a couple of years last year that there's actually family descendants of Hitler. Well, he didn't have any children himself, but his family, members of the family that converted to Judaism.
Other Jews accepted them.
Yeah, they were converted. Yeah, I mean, this is quite interesting. But we have it in the Gemara too. Descendants of Haman, descendants of Sancheiriv. These were wicked leaders, and yet their descendants became righteous. Well, not all of them, but some became righteous Gentiles, righteous Jews. They converted, righteous converts. Okay. Oh, let's go weiter. We're talking about, they were speaking about the exodus of Egypt. Here's a Rambam. Rambam, in dealing with his rules concerning Pesach, writes the following. and it relates to about these sages who were discussing the Exodus the whole night. Mitzvahs asay shel Torah, according to the Rambam, there's a positive commandment from the Torah. To speak about the miracles and the wonders that would happen to our ancestors in Egypt. On the 15th day of the month of Nisan. And he quotes the verse that I think we covered last week in Exodus 13, verse 3, says, Zochor es Yom HaShabbos. I'm sorry, Zochor es Yom HaZeh Shetzas Mitzrayim. This verse says, remember this day that you came forth from Egypt. Kemoshe Ne'amad, Rambam adds to that, just like it says, Zochor et Yom HaShabbos. Remember the day of the Shabbat. So the Rambam is quoting what we call a Gezerah Shabbat, where we associate the same word from one verse to another verse, and again, this can only come from Sinai. You can't just make up your own Gezerah Shabbat. So it says, remember the Sabbath. It says, remember the day that you came out of Egypt. Oh, so how do you associate those two? Shabbat, we know, why do we remember the Sabbath? To remind us of the birth of the world, the creation of the world. When we talk about remembering the day you went out of Egypt, it's the birth of our people. So it was the birth of our nation. So just like we have a mitzvah to remember the Sabbath day, likewise we must remember the day we went out of Egypt. But I think I mentioned last week, but there's a difference between throughout the year and Pesach night. Throughout the year, just recall about Passover. God took us out of Egypt. Recall every single day in the Parshat Sitzes, by the Shema, and by Shabbos also during the week we remind ourselves about Shabbat. But on Pesach night, that's a special mitzvah to elaborate and embellish on the Exodus and with interpretations and questions and answers. That's all part of the deal. Okay, but that's why. The Rambam wants to go ahead and associate remembering the day that we went out of Egypt to remembering the Sabbath, which relates to creation. In Egypt, the Exodus from Egypt relates to the creation of of our nation. Now, so the Rambam says again, how do you know it was on the 15th day or the night of the 15th day of Nisan? Talmud Loma, you should remember, you should tell your children the day you went out of Egypt. And the sentence is that because of this, and I mentioned, I think when we covered that verse last week, whenever he says this, you're pointing to something. That's why you have like a ka'ara. You have that Passover plate where you recall, you see the things on it. There's a visual aid, I suppose you call it, visual aids to remind us of what had happened. You have to tell your child at saying, because of this, because of what I have here that I'm pointed to, my more raw, my bitter herbs, my the time of the Holy Temple, the Paschal lamb, the meat of the Paschal lamb, and the egg, which reminds us of the holiday sacrifice, and so on. Because of all what these symbols represent, this is to remind us of the going out of Egypt. And be sure she is matzah more the time when you have matzah or more placed before you. Okay. And the Rambam just continues, even if you don't have a child, even if you're sages and you're well versed in the Torah and you know what happened, nevertheless, it's a special mitzvah to discuss about the Exodus. And then the Rambam says, which means it also says in the Haggadah, the more you speak about it that night and explain it and interpret it, that anyone who does that should be praiseworthy. That was the Rambam says. So it's when you have your Seder night, discuss things concerning the Exodus, you shall be praised for it. Okay. Go a few paragraphs after that. The question that the Haggadah asked. By the way, the one who wrote Haggadah, we always refer to him as the Maggid, the one who's telling the story. He's the Maggid. So the Maggid poses the question: Yochel me Rosh Chodesh. Perhaps one should start discussing the exodus from Egypt from Rosh Chodesh. Why would I think Rosh Chodesh Nisan means? Why would I think I should start discussing it then, and not just on the night of Passover?
Because that's the first mitzvah that Hashem gave us.
It's true, and also that's when He gave us the mitzvah of matzah and maror and all the whole thing. That we should have it later on in the month.
On Rosh Chodesh, you did that?
Yeah, because He told them about on Rosh Chodesh. Besides telling them about the new moon, He also told them about the 10th day of this month. You should go ahead and get your Paschal lamb. Remember? Yeah. Okay. So I'm thinking since God told them all those mitzvahs on Rosh Chodesh, perhaps we should start speaking about the Exodus from Rosh Chodesh. So it's the Talmud Loma Bayomu. No, therefore the Torah says on that day. What day? Ibayomu Yochomod Yom. Well, that day maybe it means the 14th day of Nisan, when you go ahead and bring your lamb and you sacrifice your lamb on the 14th day. Maybe that's when you should start discussing about the Exodus. So the pasuk is telling us the only time you have the mitzvah of Haggadah is when you have matzah and maror in front of you. When you're doing the Seder, that's when you have the mitzvah of discussion concerning the exodus of Egypt. Now remember I said the word zeh. Whenever you have the word zeh, what is that?
Pay attention to this.
What?
Means pay attention. There's
Not
a mitzvah.
just pay attention. You
the
point
mitzvah,
to it.
right?
You point,
Right.
Okay. So this is one place when Rosh Chodesh, when God said HaChodesh Hazeh, look at, see the new moon. When you see it, the sliver looks like a little, or the sages call it the sickle. Looks like the sickle. That's when Rosh Chodesh. But He showed it to him. Hashem showed Moshe Rabbeinu. Also, there was another place. Well, the other place, we do it every Shabbat. What was it mentioned last time too, where we say Zot HaTorah, and we pick up the Torah. What does Zot HaTorah mean? Zot HaTorah. This is the Torah. So we point to it. Again, whenever you have Zeh or Zot, which means this, you always point to it. Another place, when Hashem told Moshe Rabbeinu to make the menorah, Moshe Rabbeinu did not know, could not conceive how it might have looked. And we find in Parshat, it says, V'zeh ma'aseh menorah. God showed him, this is the way you make the menorah. Pointed to it. This is the way the menorah should look.
Then Moshe didn't make it, but Bezalel made it, right?
But still he didn't know how to, but he had to give the instructions to Bezalel. How did it look? Okay, we know there's branches and you have the shaft in the middle and so on. But there was more than that. There's certain decorations that were on the menorah. So Moshe couldn't conceive exactly how that looked. So that's why it's in Passover.
When you say Zeh and Zot, is that a minhag or is that
Zeh? No, in Hebrew they both mean this, but Zeh is masculine. Zot,
right, no, I know that, but
feminine.
is that a minhag or is that a mitzvah?
It's a minhag to do that.
It's a minhag. Not everybody does
point
it.
at the Torah. Yeah, that's the way it's done. If you didn't
So everybody does it, or is that just a minhag?
No. I think in all synagogues that I not everybody does it. I don't think they know you're supposed to do it. You find people pointing at the Torah when they say that verse. Zos HaTorah. It's pointing to it. And when Hashem told Moshe, HaChodesh Ezelechem, this new moon, this is the way it's supposed to look. Or the menorah. It says in Bamidbar, chapter 8, verse 4. It says, I'm sorry, in Vayikra, chapter 11, verse 23, it says, "V'zeh maseh hamenorah." This is the way you make the menorah. Or when God went ahead and discussed certain insects or swarming things that were not kosher, he said, "V'zeh lochem hatomei." This is this shall be for you unclean. You cannot, meaning you're not permitted to eat it. It's not kosher. The word kosher does not appear in the Torah. They always call non-kosher something that's non-kosher tomei, not clean.
Right.
Yeah, okay, that's what they refer to it. So again, Moshe Rabbeinu did not know every single swarming thing what it looked like. So God, so to speak, showed him a picture of that swarming animal or insect that you're not allowed to eat. Again, the word zeh is very important. That means it's showing, God points it out to us. Okay, now see further. Okay, well, we'll continue next. What time is it? Oh, gosh. All right. Mitzvah Shem, Tuesday we'll continue again with the Haggadah. All of I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom.
Wait, I have a question.
Yeah, let's hear it. Good.
So the Haftorah, what is the Haftorah we read this week? Because
This
don't we say two Parshot? We say, right?
Yeah,
But,
it's by Yaakov Pekud and Pashas HaChodesh. That deals with when
Rosh Chodesh.
Moshe and talking about Rosh Chodesh and all preparations for Passover. So since this is Rosh Chodesh is going to be this Sunday, so
Right.
we read Parshat HaChodesh. Yeah. Okay. So it's really a long reading, 2 Parshios plus the Parshat HaChodesh. I think it's close to 280 verses altogether, something like that, 80 to 60.
And what's the Haftorah?
Special Haftorah for Parshat HaChodesh. I don't know where it comes from. You have to look. Yeah, there's going to be a special Haftorah this week, and also they are going to bless the new month of Nisan, which is Sunday, Saturday night and Sunday. You know, if we're blessing the new month and Sunday is Nisan, Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it's 2 weeks to Pesach. Okay, it's a lot of
Shabbat
preparation.
Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Rabbi.
Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat
Yeah.
Shalom. Thank you, Rabbi.
Right.
Chodesh Tov.
Okay. Chodesh. Yeah. Good Chodesh.
I bought my egg matzah today.
But yeah, I hope it's not for the Seder.
That's why I bought it, so I won't have challah on
Okay.
Friday.
Okay, you did right.
Otherwise, I wouldn't have bought it.
Okay, good.
And you're
Somebody
recommending.
listens to me. Okay, Shabbat Shalom. Mi'ez Hashem we'll meet again on Tuesday at 12:30.
Tuesday, yeah.
Mi'ez
Shabbat
Hashem, we'll
Shalom.
continue.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. Shabbat Shalom to you.
Shabbat Shalom.